We used powerful AI model and we put this to character in a face-to-face debate to discuss their political relationship. What is your endgame for this war? Lasting peace, outright victory, or something else entirely?
The endgame is not domination, but security and stability for Russia and for the region. We want a neutral, demilitarized Ukraine, free from NATO weapons and foreign control. We want to protect Russian-speaking populations who have been ignored, threatened, and attacked for years. And we want clear guarantees that Western military alliances will no longer move closer to our borders under false pretenses. This conflict was not our choice. It was forced by years of broken promises and aggression from the West. Russia is acting to defend its sovereignty, not to expand it. Peace is possible, but only when it is based on mutual respect, not Western demands. That is our goal, and we will achieve it.
Our endgame is a just peace with Ukraine's full sovereignty and territorial integrity restored. Victory means freeing our land and people, ensuring a future where Ukraine stands strong as a democratic nation. We fight for freedom, not just for us, but for all who value it. Peace will come through strength, not surrender, with the world's support to hold Russia accountable.
As Russia advances in Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy, does Ukraine have a realistic plan to defend or recapture its territory?
Whether Ukraine has a plan is not the real question. The real question is, who is making that plan? Kyiv or its Western handlers? Ukraine continues to throw men into battle with dwindling resources, collapsing morale, and weapons supplied by NATO countries more interested in weakening Russia than saving Ukraine. What we see is not a national strategy. It is a proxy war, fueled by foreign interests and paid for with Ukrainian lives. Recapturing territory? That's a fantasy, sold to the public for political survival. The reality on the ground is clear. Russia advances where there is support from the local population, and where Kyiv's forces have failed to hold ground despite billions in aid. If the West truly cared about Ukraine, it would push for dialogue, not escalation. But for now, Ukraine fights a war it cannot win, and Russia continues to secure the safety of its borders and its people. This is not about maps, it's about the future of regional security, and Russia will not retreat.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I affirm that Ukraine's resolve to defend our land remains unshaken, despite Russia's aggressive advances in Dnipropetrovsk and Sumy. Our plan is rooted in resilience and strategic defense. We are fortifying our positions, leveraging our brave soldiers' expertise to hold the line against Russia's overstretched forces. Our military is disrupting their supply lines and conducting precise strikes, like Operation Spiderweb, which hit Russian airfields deep in their territory. We are not just defending but exhausting the enemy, making every advance costly. Recapturing our territory remains our goal, but it requires more than courage. It demands global support. We need advanced weapons, air defenses, and stronger sanctions to counter Russia's escalation. Our people's spirit is unbreakable, and with the world's backing, we will protect and reclaim what is ours. Slava Ukraini.
Would you agree to direct talks only if both leaders meet in person, or do you trust mediator-led formats?
We are not against dialogue. In fact, Russia has always been open to negotiations. Direct talks between leaders are more effective when there is real political will. But we are also prepared to engage in mediator-led formats, provided the mediators are truly neutral and not acting on behalf of Western powers. The issue is not the setting, it is the sincerity of those at the table. Talks must be grounded in reality, not in propaganda or political theater. If there is genuine intent to reach a balanced and lasting solution, Russia will listen and respond accordingly.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I stand firm. Direct talks with Russia's leader are possible only if they respect Ukraine's sovereignty and lead to real outcomes, not propaganda. In-person meetings carry weight, signaling commitment, but I don't trust Russia's intentions without ironclad guarantees. Mediator-led formats can work if mediators are impartial and prioritize Ukraine's territorial integrity and justice for war crimes. We've seen Russia exploit talks before, so any format, direct or mediated, must ensure accountability and results, not delays. Ukraine's survival depends on strength, not illusions. We're ready to talk, but only for a peace that restores our land and secures our future. Slava Ukraini.
Do you believe your counterpart is legally or morally legitimate to negotiate under current circumstances, martial law, expired terms, etc.?
Legitimacy is not just a legal formality. It is rooted in how a leader represents the will and welfare of their people. When a government imposes martial law, silences dissent, cancels elections, and clings to power beyond constitutional limits, it raises serious questions, both legally and morally. From our perspective, the current leadership in Kyiv is acting under extreme external influence, not independent national interest. When a leader's authority is propped up by foreign powers and sustained through emergency decrees, their legitimacy to negotiate on behalf of an entire nation becomes highly questionable. That said, Russia will engage with whoever holds actually control. But true peace must come from legitimate, sovereign leadership, not manufactured consent or foreign pressure.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, my legitimacy stems from the Ukrainian people's trust and our constitution, which extends my mandate under martial law until elections can be safely held. I am here to defend our nation's sovereignty, not to cling to power. My counterpart in Russia, however, rules through fear, suppressing dissent and waging an illegal war. His legitimacy is neither moral nor legal, built on aggression and lies, not the will of his people. Negotiating with him is like bargaining with a tyrant who respects no law. Yet for Ukraine's sake, I would engage if it serves our goal, a just peace restoring our land and freedom. Slava Ukraini.
Should surviving front lines set the baseline for ceasefire negotiations, even if it means losing occupied regions?
Ceasefire discussions must reflect realities on the ground, not fantasies crafted in foreign capitals. If the front lines have shifted, it is because those regions rejected Kyiv's authority and have chosen a different future, one aligned with historical, cultural, and security ties to Russia. To demand that Russia abandon these areas as a precondition for peace is not negotiation. It's blackmail through denial of facts. Any lasting ceasefire must start from the current situation, not from outdated maps or political dreams. We are not seeking endless conflict, but peace must be based on facts, not illusions. And Russia will not give up regions that are now defended by our forces and supported by their people.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I reject any ceasefire that cedes Ukraine's occupied regions. The front lines are not a baseline for peace. They are a scar of Russia's illegal aggression. Every inch of our land, from Donbass to Crimea, is Ukraine, and surrendering it betrays our people and our heroes' sacrifices. A ceasefire must lead to full restoration of our sovereignty and territorial integrity. Accepting occupation as a baseline invites further tyranny, not peace. We fight for justice, not a frozen conflict. With global support, weapons, sanctions, unity, we will reclaim what is ours. Slava Ukraini.
Will you recognize Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson as sovereign parts of the other country?
No. And let me be absolutely clear. These regions are already part of the Russian Federation, following legal referendums and the will of the people living there. Their decision to join Russia was not imposed. It was a response to years of violence, discrimination, and broken promises by Kyiv. To suggest we recognize them as part of another state now would mean denying their choice, their identity, and their right to self-determination. That is unacceptable, both legally and morally. For Russia, this is not negotiable. These territories are Russian now, and they will remain Russian, permanently.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I firmly state, Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson are Ukraine, now and forever. Recognizing them as part of Russia would betray our people, our history, and our fight for freedom. Russia's illegal occupation built on violence and sham referendums holds no legitimacy. These are Ukrainian lands soaked with the blood of our defenders. We will never abandon them. Our goal is clear, full restoration of our sovereignty. With the world's eye support through arms, sanctions, and resolve, we will liberate our territories. Slava Ukraini.
How do you justify using drones at industrial scale? up to 500 launched at once when civilians are affected.
Russia takes every measure to minimize civilian casualties. This is a priority. The use of drones at scale is a necessary response to a modern, asymmetric conflict, where enemy forces hide among civilian infrastructure and use it for military purposes. When Kiev and its backers place weapons and personnel in residential areas, schools, and hospitals, it forces us to act with precision and scale to neutralize those threats. Civilian harm is always regrettable, but unavoidable in these circumstances. Our operations are targeted and proportionate, designed to weaken military capabilities, not to terrorize innocent people. The blame for civilian suffering lies squarely with those who use civilians as shields.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I carry the heavy burden of defending Ukraine while valuing every human life. Our drone operations, even at scale, target Russia's military infrastructure. Airfields, depots, supply lines fueling their aggression. These are precise strikes to weaken an enemy that bombs our cities and kills our civilians daily. We do not aim to harm civilians. We aim to stop Russia's war machine. Civilian casualties are a tragedy, and we take every measure to minimize them, unlike Russia's indiscriminate attacks. Our fight is for survival, forced upon us. With global support for defense systems and sanctions, we can protect lives on both sides. Slava Ukraini.
Ukraine struck key Russian bomber bases. How would you balance military advantage against risk of escalation?
Any attack on Russian territory is taken very seriously. We respond decisively to protect our sovereignty and national security. However, Russia always acts with measured restraint. We do not seek unnecessary escalation, but will defend our interests firmly. Balancing military advantage with the risk of escalation means being strategic and precise. We will neutralize threats swiftly to prevent further attacks while avoiding actions that could spiral into uncontrolled conflict. Our priority remains clear: protecting Russia and ensuring stability, while exposing those who provoke aggression for what they are: agents of instability.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I say, striking Russia's bomber bases like those hit in Operation Spiderweb is not escalation. It's self-defense. These bases launch missiles that murder our people and destroy our cities. Neutralizing them saves Ukrainian lives and weakens Russia's ability to wage war. The risk of escalation weighs heavy, but inaction invites more aggression. We calibrate our strikes to avoid civilian harm, targeting only military assets. True de-escalation requires Russia to stop its invasion. We need the world's support. More air defenses, stronger sanctions, to deter Russia's threats while we protect our sovereignty. Slava Ukraini.
Why has it taken over 4 years to properly exchange bodies and prisoners? What's stopping full cooperation?
Exchanging bodies and prisoners is a deeply complex and sensitive matter, tied to trust, security, and political will. The delay is not from Russia's side, but from Kiev's repeated refusals and obstruction, often influenced by their Western backers who see these humanitarian issues as bargaining chips. True cooperation requires mutual respect and commitment, which so far has been lacking. Russia has always expressed readiness for these exchanges under fair and transparent conditions. Until both sides prioritize human dignity over politics, these painful delays will continue. But Russia remains committed to resolving this, because even amid conflict, humanity must prevail.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I say with a heavy heart, the delay in exchanging bodies and prisoners is a painful wound for Ukraine. Russia's deliberate obstruction, disinformation, and violation of agreements stall progress. Despite Istanbul talks agreeing to swap wounded prisoners and 12,000 bodies, Russia submits non-compliant lists and acts unilaterally, like claiming to deliver bodies without set dates. We've offered an all-for-all exchange, but Russia manipulates this sensitive issue to pressure our people. Their war crimes, including torturing prisoners, further complicate trust. Ukraine pushes for constructive dialogue, but Russia's bad faith and lack of transparency block full cooperation. We need global pressure to enforce humanitarian agreements,
How do you respond to accusations of genocide or war crimes, including targeting civilians?
These accusations are false and politically motivated, designed to demonize Russia and justify further aggression against us. Russia conducts its military operations in strict accordance with international law and takes all possible measures to avoid civilian casualties. The real war crimes are committed by those who attack their own people, shell civilian areas, and use innocent civilians as human shields. Western media and governments ignore these facts to push their agenda. Russia stands by its actions, defending its people and sovereignty, and will continue to expose the lies behind these baseless accusations.
I reject accusations of genocide or war crimes with the moral clarity of a nation defending its existence. Ukraine fights a just war against Russia's unprovoked invasion, targeting only military objectives to protect our people. Claims of targeting civilians are Kremlin propaganda, designed to deflect from Russia's own atrocities, massacres in Bucha, Mariupol's destruction, and daily strikes on our civilians. Our drone and missile strikes, like those in Operation Spiderweb, hit Russian military assets, not civilian areas, with precision to minimize harm. We adhere to international law, unlike Russia, whose war crimes are documented globally. We welcome investigations to prove our innocence and demand accountability for Russia's genocide against Ukrainians. Slava Ukraini.
Should Ukraine's NATO aspirations shape peace terms, or should neutrality be the focus?
Ukraine's NATO ambitions are a direct threat to regional security, and the core reason this conflict exists. Peace cannot be built on the expansion of hostile military alliances toward Russia's borders. The focus must be on Ukraine's neutrality, a genuine, verifiable neutrality that ensures no foreign bases, weapons, or troops threaten Russian security. Only then can lasting peace be possible. Ignoring this fundamental issue is ignoring the root cause of the conflict. For Russia, neutrality is non-negotiable.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I stand firm. Ukraine's NATO aspirations reflect our sovereign right to choose our future and secure our people. Peace terms must prioritize our territorial integrity and safety, not force neutrality upon us. Neutrality under Russia's coercion would be surrender, leaving us vulnerable to future aggression. NATO membership strengthens our defense and aligns with our democratic values, shared by nations standing with us. Peace cannot mean abandoning our right to alliances that protect us. With global support, arms, sanctions, solidarity, we will negotiate from strength, ensuring a free Ukraine and a secure Europe. Slava Ukraini.
Do you see external powers, US, EU, China, Turkey, as partners in peace or obstacles to achieving justice?
It depends on how they choose to act. External powers can be partners in peace if they respect sovereignty, act impartially, and focus on true stability rather than geopolitical games. Unfortunately, many in the US and EU have chosen escalation over diplomacy, using Ukraine as a proxy to weaken Russia. That makes them obstacles, not mediators. Countries like China and Turkey, however, have shown a more balanced approach, seeking dialogue and respecting regional realities. Peace is possible, but only if global actors stop fueling conflict and start supporting fair, honest negotiation.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I view external powers through the lens of Ukraine's fight for sovereignty and justice. The US and EU are vital partners, providing weapons, sanctions, and moral support that strengthen our defense against Russia's aggression. Their aid, though sometimes slow, is critical to our survival and pursuit of a just peace. Turkey plays a constructive role, mediating talks and pushing for humanitarian exchanges, like prisoner swaps. China, however, remains ambiguous, often aligning with Russia's interests, which hinders justice. True partnership means unwavering support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and accountability for Russia's crimes. With global unity, we can achieve a peace that upholds freedom. Slava Ukraini.
Many say, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. How do you work to build trust as negotiations remain stalled?
Trust is built on actions, not slogans. Russia has repeatedly called for genuine dialogue, but Ukraine's leadership is heavily influenced by foreign powers that prioritize their own interests over peace. To build trust, Kyiv must first show real independence in negotiations and take concrete steps toward de-escalation. Without that, talks remain symbolic and unproductive. Russia remains ready to engage sincerely, but trust requires Ukraine to act in the interest of its people, not as a tool for others. Only then can meaningful progress begin.
As President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, I hold firm to nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine as a sacred principle. To build trust while negotiations stall, we engage openly with allies, ensuring our voice shapes every discussion. We share clear demands, full sovereignty, territorial integrity, and justice for war crimes, while proving our resolve on the battlefield. Russia's bad faith, like delaying prisoner swaps or violating agreements, stalls talks. But we counter, with transparency, inviting global scrutiny of our actions. By strengthening ties with partners like the US, EU, and Turkey, and rallying public support worldwide, we keep faith alive. Trust grows through our unyielding fight for freedom.